Okay, so by now you're almost at the end of your Edmodo lesson. You looked up college and university in the encyclopedia to find out what it meant. And you also learned a little bit about what it means to have a liberal arts education, which is a specific form of college. But before you finish, I think it's really important that you know one other thing about college, specifically about your faculty, who they are, and what they do. So a faculty member is someone who also went to college, but they didn't just get a bachelor's degree. They also got a master's degree of some kind and a PhD. And every time they got a new degree, they learned more and more and more about a topic that was more and more specific. So their focus became narrower every time. Now, once they graduated with their PhD, they went out and got a job at a university as a faculty member teaching. And they may be teaching undergraduates like you, or graduate students, or doctoral students. But that's not all they do. In addition to teaching, universities expect scholars to continue generating research. So they did research as an undergraduate, they did research as a master's student, they did research as a doctoral student, and they got their degrees. But now they're a professor and they have to keep doing research, but they're not going to get another degree. So how do they keep score? Well, they publish. So when you go into the library and you start looking for information on a specific topic, the best information is probably going to be that generated by scholars because they are the experts in that area. Now, the scholars often write journal articles, books, they contribute essays to anthologies, they put entries into encyclopedias like the one you just used. They publish in a lot of different ways. But a lot of their materials aren't meant for you, the freshman undergraduate. They're meant for other scholars. PhDs writing for other PhDs to read. So you need to know a little bit about the cycle of research if you're going to understand what it is you're reading. Okay? So if you open the diagram that's in tile number 7 and keep it open during the rest of this lecture, we'll go through it. So first, in the upper left corner, you have scholar John Smith. Now maybe scholar John Smith is a historian, in which case he could be doing research with historical documents or archaeological evidence. He could be a social scientist who's doing research by interviewing people or taking surveys or doing focus groups or just observing human behavior. He could be a hard scientist like a physicist or a biologist who's working in a laboratory somewhere. Either way, he's doing research and he's discovering new information, or what we can call data. Once he has enough data, he starts coming up with ideas that explain this data. What is it? How does it work? Why did he get this data? And these ideas are put together into something called a theory. So once he's got a good enough theory, he's got enough data, he's got a good theory, he can publish. Now the first place that scholars usually publish is in academic journals. Journals are for scholars, by scholars. The reason they publish there to begin with is because they want other scholars to read their work and check to see how good it is. So John Smith publishes in a journal. Another scholar reads his article. Her name is Jane Chen for the purposes of this exercise. She looks at his data, but she's not entirely convinced that the idea that he had, his theory, really explains it. So she comes up with a theory of her own that explains why he got the information that he did, and she publishes an article in a journal. Now, in her article, she cites John Smith. She explains how he got his data and what his theory was. And then she explains why he's wrong and why her theory is better. So a third scholar will go ahead and read Jane's article, and he'll come back and say, well, I don't really think Jane is right, but I'm not sure Smith is right either. John Smith is right either. So I'm actually going to do the research all over again. I'm going to find the same sources and see if I can verify that John Smith's data was correct. Maybe it wasn't his theory that was the problem. Maybe it was his data. So this third person, we're calling him Vlad Isomov. He can be Russian. He reads John Smith's original paper. He recreates the research on his own, and he actually gets different data from doing the same thing, different information. So he publishes a third paper, maybe in the same academic journal, maybe in a different academic journal, saying that John Smith's data was bad, and here's why. Now, a fourth scholar, Maria Juarez, she also reads John Smith's paper. She also reviews Isomov's data. And then she creates a third idea, another theory, and it explains not only the discrepancy between Smith's data and Isomov's data, but it also explains the differences between Chen's theories and Smith's theories. And then she adds a little twist of her own. So she takes all this data and all these theories and she writes a book and publishes it. Well, this whole process probably takes a few years. And a few years down the line, John Smith, who's still been working on this the entire time, and reading all these articles by Chen, Isomov, and Juarez, comes back to his data. He uses what the other scholars have said to create a better process. He improves his research. He gets more data. Once he has the more data, he goes ahead and he publishes again with a new theory. Or not really a new theory. In this case, maybe he thinks his old theory was actually correct all along. Chen is wrong. Isomov did the research differently than Smith did, which is why he got different results. And Juarez had some good ideas, so he'll go ahead and incorporate them, but into his own theory. And he publishes again. And this goes on and on and on for years. Someone does some research, publishes, tells the world about it. Someone else tries to verify if it's true. Maybe it's not. They publish. So academics keep doing this. Scholars create ideas, they gather data, and then other scholars critique that information, add to it, say, well, you forgot to think about this, or you didn't include that, or you need to also consider these other things. And in the end, it all adds to the collective knowledge of the discipline. So when you're reading these articles and these books, one of the first things you're going to find is a review of what other scholars have said. Because no scholar wants to let it be known that he or she doesn't already know what's happening in his or her field. So that's where citation comes in. Jane Chen can't just write a new theory without giving credit to John Smith. She has to cite his original paper and make sure that she gives credit for every one of his original ideas, his theories, and for all of his original data. Isomov has to do the same thing. Juarez has to make sure that not only does she cite Smith, Chen, and Isomov, but she does so in a way where whose idea is whose doesn't get mixed up. And whose data is whose is very clear. So that this chain, this unbroken chain, stays intact. So in a way, academic research is a discussion that's happening between different scholars in writing, in slow motion, over the course of years. So that in the end, let's say Smith and Isomov and Juarez get together and the three of them write one book about this topic and they all get credit. So that's a little bit about how the process of academic research works, why scholars do what they do, how they're advancing the state of knowledge in their disciplines, and what it means when they have to cite each other to give credit. So I hope this has been helpful. I would like you to take the one last quiz. It's more of a survey than a quiz, so just answer the questions in your own opinion. It's not graded. Then you're done, and I will see you in class. Have a good one.